Klein-Halevi, who is the author of the best-selling book Like Dreamers, says that he's not surprised that the world is against what Israel is doing in Gaza, that it's because the international community fails to understand what the war is about.
Well, I think that striking disparity in perception, the way we see the war here, the way the international community sees the war, is for Israelis the central story here. And Israelis are groping to try to understand why. Now, the outbreak or the renewal of violent anti-Semitism, especially in Europe, has had a profound impact on Israeli consciousness. And certainly many Israelis today perceive the international criticism directed against us as being motivated, at least in part, if not mostly, by anti-Semitism. I think that is certainly part of what's happening. It does not by any means explain the totality of world criticism against us. And look, we are paying more close attention to the threats directed against us than the international community does, and that's natural. And we catch nuances that the international community misses. So, for example, the tunnel threat, which was perceived around the world as one more facet of this war, was seen by Israelis as the galvanizing threat. Because what we realized with the tunnel war was there is no way to stop this terrorist threat. They're coming at us above ground, they're coming at us below ground, and then the report came out in the Israeli media, which was almost completely ignored internationally, that Hamas intended to use the tunnels to take over either a kibbutz or a whole village on the border with Gaza over Rosh Hashanah, and hold hundreds of Israelis hostage. Now, this was a formative moment in coalescing public support for the war, and yet it was almost completely missed abroad. So that's just one example of how we pay attention to what's happening here, and the international community avoids it. Look, there's no way around the fact that the images are devastating, and that Israel has overwhelming advantage in firepower. What the world doesn't see is the psychological impact of years of rocket attacks on communities in the South. We are in danger of losing entire communities in the South, of thousands of people simply packing up and moving elsewhere. And if Hizbollah were to renew attacks in the north, something similar could happen there. In other words, what has happened over the last decade or so is that whole parts of this very small country are becoming potentially uninhabitable. When there are rocket attacks in an intensive way on the south, as we've experienced in recent weeks, thousands of Israelis seek refuge in the north. When there were rocket attacks on the north, thousands of Israelis sought refuge in the south. When Saddam Hussein sent Scud missiles against Tel Aviv in 1991, they came to Jerusalem. Tel Avivis fled to Jerusalem. In this war, Hamas made a very strong point. They sent missiles against Jerusalem. And the message there was, don't think that because there are Palestinians living in Jerusalem and because of the holy places there, that the Jews in Jerusalem are going to be safe. There is nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. That's the message of these last 14 years of suicide bombings, missile attacks. It is psychological warfare. And what the international community has not internalized is that the goal of these rockets and missiles is not to defeat Israel militarily. It isn't even necessarily to kill large numbers of Israelis. That's a bonus for Hamas. The real goal here is to terrorize Israelis and to send us the message that there is nothing we can do to stop them, and that ultimately we have no safe place in this region, and we might as well pack up and leave. That's the war that we're fighting, and that's what the international community has missed.